You know, after 42 years on this bench, I thought I had seen everything, every kind of defendant, every type of excuse, every form of disrespect you can imagine. But that Wednesday morning in March, something happened in my courtroom that I will remember for the rest of my life. Before we get into this story, if you appreciate these real courtroom stories about justice and standing up for what's right, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps us share these important lessons with more people. Let me tell you about Lieutenant Marcus Brennan. I got to court that morning at 8:20, like I always do. Been following the same routine for 4 decades. My father used to tell me, "Frank, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're already late." So there I was, coffee in hand, strong Italian coffee that Christina makes for me every morning, reviewing my docket for the day. Christina is my court clerk, been working with me for 20 years. She knows my routine better than I do. She hands me the case files and says, "Judge, we have an interesting one today." I look down at the schedule. Lieutenant Marcus Brennan, multiple traffic violations and failure to appear. Now here's what you need to understand. This wasn't Lieutenant Brennan's first time being summoned to court. 3 months earlier, he had been caught doing 85 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour school zone. At 3 in the afternoon, when kids were getting out of school, the officer who pulled him over, Officer Jennifer Martinez, a 10-year veteran, she wrote in her report that Lieutenant Brennan refused to provide his license. He told her, "I don't answer to street cops. I'm a lieutenant. Let me go, or you'll regret it." Officer Martinez, God bless her, she didn't back down. She gave him the ticket anyway. And you know what Lieutenant Brennan did? He drove off before she finished writing it. Just drove away while she was standing there. So she finished the ticket and mailed it to him, along with an additional charge for leaving the scene. The court sent him 3 notices to appear, 3 separate times. He ignored every single one. That's how he ended up with a mandatory court appearance. When you ignore the court 3 times, you don't get a choice anymore. You show up, or there's a warrant for your arrest. I'm reading through the file, and Christina says, "Judge, there's something else you should know. Lieutenant Brennan called my office yesterday." What did he say? He said, and I quote, that this whole thing is beneath him and he expects it to be dismissed the moment he walks in. He said he's a decorated officer with 15 years of service and he doesn't have time for this nonsense. I took off my reading glasses and looked at Christina. He used the word nonsense? Yes, Judge, and he also said that if you don't dismiss it immediately, he knows people who can make things difficult for you. Now let me tell you something. Growing up in Providence, my father worked 3 jobs to support our family: construction during the day, night security, and weekend shifts at the docks. He taught me that respect is earned, not demanded, and threatening a judge before you even step into the courtroom. That's not how you earn respect. I could feel this was going to be one of those mornings. Court started at 9 o'clock, like always. The first case that morning was Mrs. Elena Vasquez. She's a 63-year-old cleaning lady, been in this country for 30 years, works 2 jobs to support herself and send money back to her grandchildren in Guatemala. She got a parking ticket outside the hospital where she works the night shift. $50 fine. But here's the thing. Her car had broken down while she was inside working. The tow truck didn't arrive until the next morning, and by then she had the ticket. Mrs. Vasquez came to court with the tow truck receipt, the repair bill, and her work schedule. She was so nervous her hands were shaking as she handed me the papers. "Your Honor," she said in careful English, "I am so sorry. I never park illegal. I am always following the rules. But my car," she broke down. I did not know what to do. I looked at her paperwork. Everything was in order. The timestamps matched her story perfectly. "Mrs. Vasquez," I said, "I see you've been a responsible member of our community for 30 years. Not a single ticket in all that time. Your car broke down through no fault of your own, and you have all the documentation to prove it. Case dismissed." The relief on her face, where you could see her whole body relax. "Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you so much. God bless you." That's what this courtroom is supposed to be about. Fairness, understanding, looking at the whole situation, not just the piece of paper in front of you. And that's when Lieutenant Marcus Brennan walked in. 6'1", muscular build, short dark hair, clean-shaven, wearing his dress uniform with every medal he'd ever earned pinned to his chest. And I mean every single one. It looked like a military parade. But it wasn't his appearance that caught my attention. It was the way he walked, like he owned not just the courtroom, but the entire building. Chest out, chin up, eyes looking straight ahead like everyone else was beneath his notice. He walked past Mrs. Vasquez, who was gathering her papers to leave. As he passed her, I heard him mutter under his breath, "At least some people know when to be grateful." Mrs. Vasquez looked up at him, startled. He didn't even glance at her, just kept walking toward the front of my courtroom. Now, I don't know if he meant for me to hear that, but I did, and right then, I knew exactly what kind of person I was dealing with. "Lieutenant Brennan," I said, looking directly at him, "you're here today for multiple traffic violations and 3 failures to appear. How do you plead?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked around the courtroom like he was inspecting it. There were maybe 20 people in the gallery, other defendants waiting for their cases, a few law students observing, regular folks who come to watch court proceedings. Then he turned back to me and said, "Your Honor, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," I repeated. "Please explain." "I'm a lieutenant with the Providence Police Department. I've served this city for 15 years. I've received 4 commendations for bravery. I've put my life on the line more times than I can count, and I'm being called into court over a simple speeding ticket?" "Lieutenant," I said calmly, "you weren't just speeding. You were doing 85 in a 35-mile-per-hour school zone during school hours. That's not simple speeding, that's reckless endangerment." He waved his hand dismissively. "I was responding to a situation, an emergency call." I looked down at Officer Martinez's report. "According to the officer who stopped you, you were not running lights or sirens. You were not in a marked vehicle. And when asked about an emergency, you told Officer Martinez, and I quote, that you were late for a golf game." The courtroom got very quiet. I could see people in the gallery looking at each other. Lieutenant Brennan's face got red. That officer misunderstood. She's young, inexperienced, probably couldn't handle the pressure of pulling over a superior officer. "Officer Martinez has 10 years of experience," I said. "Her record is spotless. Are you saying she lied in her official report?" "I'm saying," he said, his voice getting louder, "that this whole thing is ridiculous. I protect this city. I put criminals in jail. I make the streets safe. And you're going to sit there and tell me I can't drive a little fast when I need to." I took off my glasses, something I only do when I need to make a point, and cleaned them slowly. My father taught me this. When someone is getting aggressive, you slow down. You stay calm. You don't match their energy. "Lieutenant Brennan," I said quietly, "the law applies to everyone equally. Police officers, judges, politicians, regular citizens. No one is above it. Now, you also have 3 failures to appear. You were sent 3 notices. Why didn't you come to court?" "Because I'm busy," he shouted. "I'm out there every day dealing with real crime. Murderers, drug dealers, gang members. I don't have time to sit in court over a speeding ticket." Yet somehow Mrs. Vasquez, who works 2 jobs and is in her 60s, found time to come to court, I said. She showed up, brought her documentation, showed respect for the process. You, with all your resources and authority, couldn't be bothered. He took a step toward my bench. My bailiff, Officer Rodriguez, immediately moved closer, but Lieutenant Brennan didn't seem to notice or care. "You want to compare me to her?" He pointed back toward where Mrs. Vasquez had been sitting. "I'm a lieutenant. I've got 15 years on the force. I've got connections throughout this city. The police commissioner, the mayor, they all know me." "Lieutenant," I said, my voice still calm but firm, "your connections don't matter in this courtroom. Your rank doesn't matter. What matters is that you broke the law, endangered children, and then showed contempt for the court by ignoring 3 summons. And that's when things went from bad to worse." Lieutenant Brennan turned around and looked at the people in the courtroom. Then he turned back to me with a smile that wasn't a smile at all. "Your Honor," he said, and the way he said "Your Honor" was dripping with sarcasm, "I think you're making a big mistake here. I think you don't understand who you're dealing with." "Is that a threat, Lieutenant?" "It's a fact. I know things about people in this city, important people, people who wouldn't want certain information to become public. And I have friends who could make your life very difficult, Judge Caprio." I stood up from my bench, something I almost never do. The courtroom went dead silent. Lieutenant Brennan, you need to think very carefully about what you say next. You are currently in contempt of court. Do not make this worse for yourself. Contempt? He laughed. Actually laughed out loud. You're going to hold me in contempt? Do you know what I can do? One phone call, and you'll have investigators looking into every decision you've ever made. One phone call, and the newspapers will be digging into your past. Lieutenant Brennan, I'm warning you. No, you listen. He was shouting now, pointing his finger at me. I'm done with this. You want to play games? Fine. Officer Rodriguez. He turned to my bailiff. Arrest the judge. Right now, arrest him for abuse of power. The entire courtroom gasped. I mean, you could hear the collective intake of breath from every person in that room. Officer Rodriguez just stood there, looking at Lieutenant Brennan like he'd lost his mind. Did you hear me? Lieutenant Brennan yelled. I gave you a direct order. Arrest the judge. I'm a lieutenant. You have to follow my orders. Officer Rodriguez looked at me. I gave him a small nod. Sir, Rodriguez said to Lieutenant Brennan, I'm a court officer. I don't take orders from you. I take orders from the judge. Lieutenant Brennan's face went from red to purple. This is insubordination. I'll have your badge. I'll have you fired. That's enough, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Lieutenant Marcus Brennan, you are hereby found in contempt of court. You have threatened a sitting judge, attempted to order the arrest of a judge, and shown complete disregard for the judicial process. Bailiff, take him into custody. You know what happened? Lieutenant Brennan actually tried to resist. As Officer Rodriguez approached him, Lieutenant Brennan put his hands up and said, Don't you touch me. I'm a lieutenant. You can't arrest me. Officer Rodriguez, God bless him, stayed completely calm. Sir, please turn around and put your hands behind your back. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. This is outrageous. This is an abuse of power. I'm calling my lawyer. I'm calling the police commissioner. I'm calling the mayor. You can make all the calls you want, I said after you're processed. Right now you need to comply with the bailiff's instructions. Officer Rodriguez moved to handcuff him, and Lieutenant Brennan jerked away. Get your hands off me. That's when my second bailiff, Officer Chen, stepped in to assist. Between the two of them, they got Lieutenant Brennan turned around and handcuffed, but he was still yelling the whole time. You're going to regret this, all of you. I know people, important people. This judge is corrupt. Somebody call Internal Affairs. Call the FBI. Call somebody. As they led him toward the door, he was still shouting, This is not over. You hear me? This is not over. I'm a decorated officer, 15 years of service. You can't treat me like this. I looked at my watch. From the moment he'd said, arrest the judge, to the moment they took him out of my courtroom in handcuffs, exactly 12 minutes had passed. The courtroom was still silent. Everyone was processing what they'd just witnessed. I sat back down and took a sip of water. My hands were steady, but my heart was pounding, not from fear, from anger. Anger at the arrogance, anger at someone who thought his badge gave him the right to threaten a judge and try to order the arrest of that judge in his own courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen, I said to the courtroom, we're going to take a 15-minute recess. Christina came up to my bench as people filed out. Judge, are you okay? I'm fine, Christina, but I need to make some phone calls. Lieutenant Brennan said he was going to call people. Well, I need to make sure the right people know exactly what happened here today. I called the police commissioner first, explained the situation. He was not happy at all, but not with me, with Lieutenant Brennan. Judge Caprio, he said, I've been hearing concerns about Lieutenant Brennan for a while now, complaints about his attitude, his treatment of junior officers. But this is beyond anything I could have imagined. You have my full support. Then I called the presiding judge, my boss, explained what happened. He said he'd review the courtroom recording and that I'd done exactly what I should have done. That afternoon, Lieutenant Brennan was formally charged with contempt of court, threatening a judge, and resisting arrest. His bail was set at $10,000. But here's what really matters. 3 days later, Officer Jennifer Martinez, the officer who had originally ticketed Lieutenant Brennan, she came to see me during a break in court. Judge Caprio, she said, I wanted to thank you. Thank me for what, Officer Martinez? For standing up to him. Lieutenant Brennan has been bullying officers for years, especially female officers and younger officers. He thinks his rank makes him untouchable. When I gave him that ticket, he called my supervisor and tried to get me written up for insubordination. My supervisor backed me up, but it was scary. You did the right thing giving him that ticket, I said. You were doing your job. The fact that he was a lieutenant doesn't change that he was endangering children. I know, but it takes courage to stand up to people like him, and you showed that courage. You showed all of us that no one is above the law. That conversation meant more to me than she probably realized. 1 week later, I got a letter from the police commissioner. He wrote, Judge Caprio, following the incident in your courtroom, we launched an internal investigation into Lieutenant Brennan. What we found was disturbing. Multiple complaints from junior officers about harassment and abuse of authority. Evidence that he'd been using his position to get special treatment, free meals at restaurants, dismissed tickets for friends and family, preferential treatment in various situations. Your actions in holding him accountable have opened our eyes to a serious problem. Lieutenant Brennan has been suspended pending a full investigation. We are also implementing new oversight procedures to prevent this kind of abuse of authority in the future. 6 weeks later, Lieutenant Brennan appeared in my courtroom again. This time he was a different man. He had been demoted to patrol officer. The internal investigation had found enough evidence of misconduct that he was given a choice: accept the demotion and mandatory counseling, or resign. He chose to stay. He stood before me in a regular uniform, no medals, no swagger, just a man who had learned a hard lesson. Your Honor, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. What I did in your courtroom was inexcusable. I let my ego and my sense of entitlement control my actions. I threatened you, I disrespected the court, and I set a terrible example for other officers. I looked at him carefully. Was this real? Or was he just saying what he thought I wanted to hear? Officer Brennan, I said, deliberately using his new rank. Words are easy. Actions are what matter. Have you learned from this experience? Yes, sir. I've been required to attend counseling, and honestly, it's opened my eyes. I've spent 15 years thinking my rank and my service gave me special privileges. But the law doesn't work that way. It shouldn't work that way. Everyone deserves equal treatment, whether they're a police officer or a cleaning lady like Mrs. Vasquez. That reference to Mrs. Vasquez surprised me. He remembered. I've also apologized to Officer Martinez, he continued, and to the other officers I bullied over the years. I can't undo what I did, but I'm trying to be better. That's all any of us can do, I said. We all make mistakes. The question is what we do after. Do we learn, do we change, or do we just keep making the same mistakes? For his original offenses, the speeding in the school zone and the failures to appear, I fined him $2,000 and ordered 100 hours of community service. Specifically, he had to volunteer at the school where he'd been speeding, helping with traffic safety education. For the contempt of court, I gave him 30 days in jail, suspended on the condition that he complete anger management counseling and have no further incidents for 2 years. Thank you, Your Honor, he said. I deserved worse. Maybe, I said, but justice isn't about punishment for punishment's sake. It's about accountability and the opportunity for redemption. Don't waste this opportunity. 6 months later, and this is my favorite part of the story, I got a letter from the principal of that elementary school where Officer Brennan had been speeding. She wrote, Judge Caprio, I wanted to let you know that Officer Brennan has been an absolute asset to our school. He's not just putting in his hours, he's genuinely engaged. He's helped us develop a new traffic safety program. He talks to the kids about making good choices and respecting rules. He's even volunteered extra hours beyond his requirement. Whatever happened in your courtroom, it changed this man for the better. You know what my father taught me? He'd say, Frank, power without humility is just tyranny waiting to happen, but power with humility can change the world. Lieutenant Brennan, Officer Brennan now, he learned that lesson the hard way. He thought his rank, his 15 years of service, his medals, his connections. He thought all of that put him above the law. He thought he could threaten a judge, order the arrest of a judge, and face no consequences. He was wrong. From the moment he said, arrest the judge, to the moment he was dragged out of my courtroom in handcuffs was exactly 12 minutes. But those 12 minutes changed his entire life. They changed the police department. They changed how officers thought about accountability. Because here's the truth. We need police officers. We need good men and women who are willing to put on that uniform and protect our communities. But we also need those officers to understand that the badge doesn't put them above the law. It puts them in service to the law. Officer Martinez showed us what good policing looks like, doing your duty even when it's difficult, even when someone with more power tries to intimidate you. Officer Brennan showed us what happens when you forget that lesson, but he also showed us, eventually, that people can change, that accountability can lead to growth, that sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones we need most. I still think about that day sometimes, that moment when he stood in my courtroom and ordered my own bailiff to arrest me, the audacity of it, the sheer arrogance. But I also think about the man who came back 6 weeks later, humbled and genuinely remorseful. Both moments matter. The first showed us why we need accountability. The second showed us why we offer redemption. In my courtroom, everyone is equal. From Mrs. Vasquez, the cleaning lady who works 2 jobs, to Lieutenant Brennan with his 15 years of service and chest full of medals, the law doesn't care about your rank. It doesn't care about your connections. It doesn't care about your power or your position. The law cares about one thing, the truth. And the truth that day was that Officer Brennan had broken the law, shown contempt for the court, and needed to be held accountable. So remember this story the next time someone tells you they're above the rules. Remember what happened when Lieutenant Marcus Brennan tried to order the arrest of a judge. Remember that in America, in a democracy, no one, absolutely no one, is above the law. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in equal justice under law, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Share this story with others who need to hear it, because these lessons about humility, accountability, and redemption, they matter now more than ever. Thanks for listening, and God bless.